Okay, so we've got these pictures that we're sort of integrating with each other because we're talking about the structure of the world. We're talking not just the physical spatial aspects, but the temporal spaces aspects. And of course, now we're going to add in the idea of reincarnation and, and karma. Well, what's one of the ideas of reincarnation? Well, the central idea of reincarnation is that this I, this thing that you know as the core of yourself when you use the word I, and which we've given also the label spirit, the part that experiences, the part that acts, the part that creates your style, your individuality, your style, your way of being in the world that's unique to you. That part is immortal. Let me repeat. The I is immortal. It can't be killed. It can be disassembled, which can happen voluntarily or involuntarily, but that's sort of another thing, you know. If you go to the East and you talk and you look at the ideas that they have about the I or the ego, which are somewhat different from the ideas that the West has, and there's significant and important elements to these differences, but in any event, if you go to the East and you look at sort of spiritual developmental ideas, well, you don't have to go to the East. They're all over America, for example. And that's not necessarily a good thing, by the way. But in any event, they have these concepts, a lot of them, about the I or the ego, as if that's sort of a temporary construct and we could do away with it. And in fact, if you're going to be an enlightened human being, according to some of the thinking that's presented to us out of the East, you want to give up your ego. You don't want to see yourself as a separate individuality. You want to sort of get rid of that and become just what? Well, that's where the mystery is. I'm not going to try to get into too many details on that, but let's talk about that a little, that idea. Because having introduced the idea of immortal spirit, I also have to deal with the fact that from an Eastern point of view, in its qualitative appreciation of the nature of the world and the structure of the world, it puts forward this idea that the ultimate goal is the dissolution of the I and its sort of self-determined reabsorption into the all. Our being, you might say, is meant to merge itself with the totality of being. Lots of different ways this is talked about. And the thing is in the West, interestingly enough, that's not the idea that people have about the I or the immortal spirit. We have a different idea. When you're in work with the people that I work with, the sort of skillful ones, you might say, in the West. And now we do have this perception of our individuality in the West, that we like it. We like being I. And we have a hard time being I. We have a hard time manifesting ourselves against the social milieu, which wants us to just be what it wants us to be. But that's sort of a different question. Let's just think about this I for a minute and consider that in the cultural West, there's a different idea about it than the cultural East. Okay, let's back up a little bit. Let's run our picture of what's gone on in this globe kind of backwards. You know, let's back up from the European invasion, back through the founding of Western civilization, the Greeks and the Roman, and then more back up through Egyptian culture, Persian culture, Indian culture, Chinese culture, back up to where the adepts that fled Atlantis created this mystery center in the Gobi Desert region. Okay? Now, At the time that they did that, they had a certain idea of the I. And when the seven holy rishis taught and various other teachers founded the civilizations of the East, they had a certain conception of the I, or the ego. And this conception was based on what the I was in the past. And these folks remembered, because they were integrated with the spirit of the world, you might say, remembered what it was like to not even have a bodily experience. There's a memory latent in the whole culture of the East of this non-bodily experience, and it's in a lot of the pictures that they have in their religious teachings and so on and so forth. And one of the aspects of this is the conception of the I, or the individual spirit. And what's happened, and this is directly related to the events that we talked about when I talked about the activity of the Creator Being. The Creator Being hasn't stopped creating. Creation is continuous, and when we get into certain particularities of the science, the new science that's being developed by the skillful people that of the West, and I'll get into that. That's a whole big subject. I showed you a couple books very early on in these dialogues, Wernslaer's Man and Matter, and Adams and Witcher's book, the Plant Between the Sun and the Earth. But anyway, we have then in this situation, what? Well, we have in the Eastern cultures that were developed as this movement came out of the Elder Brother people sort of moved in and created the Eastern cultures, a certain idea of the I, which is a memory of its primordial state when it was part of the unity of things. And then as this I consciousness developed through multiple incarnations over the period of time, that we end up with the clash that we experience today, kind of in the avatar metaphor between the advancing technological oriented consciousness and the Indians who sort of tried to stay within the sort of virginal state relationship with nature. When this clash arises, which is what the Hopi prophecy and the Hopi oral history is about, the I that's developed over these periods of evolution, and also been influenced by the fact that the Creator Being actually himself came in and experienced human existence, experienced death and birth in Palestine 2,000 years ago. The I has evolved. It's not the same as it was in the primordial past that's remembered in systems and teachings of enlightenment. So that the I that the West knows is different. The I you possess is not that I. There's more in your I, more of the Creator himself, more of the being of the creation that stepped into human bodies when it incarnates for its earthly existence and looks out and goes, wow, look what I did. That's some structure of the world for today. More another day.